Hello and welcome. Let's jump right in today with a quick thought exercise. I'm going to ask you a question, and I just want you to notice the very first names that pop into your head. Ready? Just take a moment. Think about the stories you've seen, the names you've heard, the headlines you've read. Who are they? Got a few names in your head? Okay, good. Let's see if they're the same ones that come up for most people. Did you think of Eric Barr? Or maybe Mike Brown?
How about Tamir Race?
What about Freddie Gray? Now, if you're like most audiences who do this exercise, you probably recognize every single one of those names. They are, of course, African-American men whose tragic deaths became huge national stories. Okay, so let's try another list. How many of these do you recognize?
Michelle Casals,
Tanisha Anderson,
Ara Rosser,
and Megan Hockaday. Yeah, far fewer people know these names. And yet these are also African-Americans who were killed by police, all within that same time frame. The only thing that really distinguishes the names we all know from the ones we don't is gender. All the names on this second list belong to Black women.
Now, this isn't just a pop quiz. It reveals what legal scholar Kimberlé Crenshawin calls a framing problem. When certain facts don't fit the frames we use to understand the world, like, say, racism is something that happens to Black men and sexism is something that happens to white women, well, those facts tend to fall right through the cracks. The stories of these women, they become invisible.
So this is the very problem that Kimberlé Crenshawin set out to name. Back in 1989, she actually coined a term to describe this dynamic, a word to finally help us see the people who were falling through those cracks. And that term is intersectionality. So at its very core, intersectionality is a lens. It's a way of seeing that reveals how social problems like racism and sexism aren't actually separate issues that live in their own little bubbles. Instead, they overlap, and they create these compounding, layered levels of injustice for people who exist at those intersections. And this idea, it came from a real-world legal fight. This is the story of Emma DeGraffenreid. She was a Black woman who applied for a job at a car manufacturing plant and was not hired. So she sued, arguing that she was discriminated against specifically because she was a Black woman. But here was the court's dilemma. The judge looked at the company, General Motors, and saw that, yes, they hired African Americans for industrial jobs, but they were all men. And yes, the company hired women for secretarial roles, but they were all white women. Because the court was only set up to see discrimination through a single lens, either race or gender, but not both at the same time, it decided there was no discrimination happening. Emma's case was dismissed. Crenshaw needed a way to make the court see the problem, so she came up with a simple but incredibly powerful analogy. I want you to picture an intersection. The roads represent the big structures of our society. One road is for race, the other is for gender. And the traffic flowing down those roads, that's all the policies and practices. Now, Emma was standing right there, in the middle of that intersection. This meant she could be hit by traffic coming from the race road and the gender road. The law, however, was like an ambulance. It could only help her if she was hurt on one road or the other. It had no idea how to treat an injury that happened in the intersection itself, and that is intersectionality. And this brings us to a really crucial point. Intersectionality isn't just a label, and it's not about listing off your identities. It's a tool for analysis. It's about understanding the deep structural issues and power dynamics at play. It's a concept so fundamental that today, huge organizations like the United Nations actually use it to frame their global work. It's truly a lens for seeing the world more clearly. In fact, the UN's own guide on this helps clear up some really common misunderstandings. See, intersectionality is not some kind of oppression Olympics. It's an analysis of how power actually works. It helps us see that these inequalities are dynamic, and they change depending on the situation. And it asks all of us to think about how our own positions and our own biases shape our perspective. So how does this actually work in the real world? Well, global organizations like the United Nations use an intersectional approach to try and fulfill their core promise to leave no one behind. So for them, it's not just a theory, it is a framework for action. They've boiled it down to 3 key steps. First, you analyze the root causes of discrimination, asking who is being left out and, importantly, why. Second, you adapt your programs and policies to deal with those specific overlapping barriers that you found. And third, you assess what has actually changed on the ground, so you're constantly learning and improving your approach.
Ultimately, applying this lens is about getting us closer to what human rights experts call substantive equality. It's this recognition that just treating everyone the same doesn't actually work when people are starting from such different places. You see, to create true equality, we have to understand and address the specific intersecting barriers that real people face.
You know, a UN guide on this topic puts it perfectly. There is no such thing as a single-issue struggle because we do not live single-issue lives. We just can't solve complex problems with simplistic solutions. Our lives are complicated and multifaceted, and the frameworks we use to build a more just world have to reflect that reality.
In the end, intersectionality gives us a lens to see what was once invisible. It challenges all of us to look for the intersections in our own communities, in our workplaces, and in our systems of power. And it leaves us with a critical, ongoing question. Whose stories are we still not seeing? And what can we do to finally bring them into the light?